Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, the author of The Captivating Public Speaker, Peter George.
Do you want to wow your audiences? Would doing so help you stand apart from other speakers? Would it help you and your message be more effective and more memorable? In this episode, my guest, Ronny Leber, tells you how you can create what he calls magic moments so you can wow your audiences. Ronny is a world-renowned keynote speaker, TV host, stadium host, and legacy coach who has entertained millions of people worldwide at sporting events, corporate events, and seminars. As a keynote speaker, Ronny loves to motivate his listeners, fill them with momentum, and provide magic moments that enhance team building skills and peak performance. He specializes in working with high-level individuals to create their legacy and multiply their impact by helping them build an emotional bridge to their audience and create raving fans. Here's my conversation with Ronny Leber. Hi, Ronny. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Peter. Happy to be here.
Ronny, you've been entertaining more than 5 million people on 5 continents. How is it that you got into public speaking?
Well, that's actually a great question. And my first inspiration, that was when I was in high school in the US back in 96. There was the presidential campaign back then. Clinton Gore running against Bob Dole back then. And I was in a class in high school which was called Election 96. It was just focused on the elections. And through that class, we actually went to see Al Gore and Bill Clinton live. And I remember the first time that I actually saw Al Gore speaking. And I know that what the media says about Al Gore and so on, that he's boring or whatever. I didn't find him boring at all. I thought it was very entertaining. And I saw him playing with the audience and I was just wowed by his ability to entertain and to capture an audience. Being 16 years old at the time, I thought, wow, that is something that I would love to be able to do. I had no idea that I would actually be doing something like this later on, but that was my first inspiration in public speaking. And many years later, it happened to me because I was following my passion after having studied economics and sports at 2 different universities. I was finally asking myself, all right, what do you want to do now after you're done? And then I thought, how about I do something that I'm passionate about? Well, that's a great concept, but what is that? And so I was asking myself questions. And finally, I got to that I've always been passionate about events that bring the whole world together. And that also means that like when I grew up, the Soccer World Cup or the Olympics or something, it was always something that you were so consumed by the event that you didn't think about, oh, I need to go to the hairdresser tomorrow or I need to write a text message. You were totally there. And I thought, that's an environment I would love to work at. And it just happened to be at the same time that, and I also have a sports background, as I mentioned, that a professional sports team in Vienna, Austria, where I'm from, they were looking at the time for a host for their youth teams in soccer. Once a month or twice a month on a Saturday afternoon for 100, 150 people. And I thought, well, that's nice. They were asking me because I knew some of them and they knew me. And then I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And 1 year later, I actually started to become the stadium announcer for our professional hockey team. And that was when I first saw that this could be an opportunity, that this could be a career, that I love doing that. I started to invest in myself, invest in my education. That's how my whole public speaking dream got ignited.
That's funny. You just wouldn't dream of a kid from Vienna going to Maine, finding his passion, going back to Vienna, and it starting to fall into place.
Yeah, it was the airport of Portland when Al Gore just flew in, held a speech, and flew out.
That's amazing. So in your experience, what do you perceive as the most important thing when you're speaking in public?
I would say three things. First of all, you have to know what your outcome is. You need to know what your outcome is before you do any speech. Before you step on any stage, you need to know why you're there. Why is it that you're talking to them? And that already leads to the second point, which is, who are they? Who is your audience? Who are you talking to? This can be a big mess if you do not know who you're talking to, or if you're addressing the wrong audience. So you really need to know, who is this? Also, as the more you know about them, the better, because the more that you can actually address them, you can touch them emotionally. You can take them on a journey, on an emotional journey, as I would love to say. And that means that you actually need to know also, what is their emotional involvement? Why are they here? What is it? What does it mean to them? Are they here because they have to, or are they here because they want to? And thirdly, you got to ask yourself, what do I want them to do afterwards? Or what do I want? What is the feeling that I want to leave them behind with? So on the one way, you're called to action, but on the other hand as well, it is really the feeling that you want them to that you want to leave them with.
You think a lot of speakers don't think about how you want to make them feel?
I do. And I do believe it's a huge point. And I want to give an example from a different field, because I have a sales background. I was, 20 years ago, I was knocking doors, door-to-door sales for a telecommunications company. And I was at 3,000 people's homes. I wrote 1,500 contracts. And I had a churn rate of less than 10. So you can count them on two hands, the people that actually canceled, which is nothing. And the reason, and I was thinking oftentimes, well, why don't they cancel with me? Like, why do they cancel with others, but not with me? And then I thought, you know what the secret is? And my outcome was not to educate them fully on everything about the telecommunications contract, because I didn't want to educate them or train them to become a salesman. I wanted to just educate them enough that they believe and trust that this is great and this is right for them. And I thought the one thing that differentiated me from the others was that my outcome was that when I leave, that they have a feeling, that I leave them with a good feeling, that they feel, you know what, I might not understand everything that he said, but I trust him. I believe him, and let's see. Let's see what happens.
That word you just used, trust. Trust is critical, is it not?
Absolutely. Don't presuppose rapport. So don't presuppose that when you step on a stage or when you talk to somebody that, oh yeah, I'm the person on the stage, so you got to trust me, or like I'm going to tell you now how life is supposed to be. That's not how it works. I can give another example. I was actually a few years ago, I was the warm-up host of a big TV show. So I was warming up the audience, and we were recording several shows on that day. And I remember after the first show, the producer came to me and he said, wow, that's amazing what you're doing. And I said, well, thank you. But I'm not really doing a lot. I'm just talking with them. And he said, yeah, and that's exactly it. Because I've seen so many people here fail because they thought it's about them. But when you're on stage, it's never about you. It's about your audience. It's about the experience that you give to them. You're just the instrument. You're the person who is guiding them and leading them through their own experience.
It's a great way to look at it. What are some of the other common mistakes you see inexperienced speakers make, and how might they correct those?
Well, I mean, okay, we already talked about making yourself too important, that it's all about you, which is not. The other thing, what we already talked about, is that you really need to prepare about your audience. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you go out there and you do not really know I'll give you an example, and I failed miserably at this. I had a speech some years ago, and I was talking with basically with secretaries. Yeah, they were assistants. And the organizer booked me for a speech, and my mistake was that I could not really put myself into their shoes. I didn't really know what it meant to be an assistant or how they feel. And if you cannot feel your audience, then it's very hard to take them on an emotional journey because you don't even know where you're starting. You need to pick them up where they're at. And that is your main job. And if you cannot do that, then you're lost.
Do you think this is often overlooked?
I do believe so, yes. I do believe so because I believe that many people, and here we might come to another mistake, when they prepare, they just think about themselves. They think about their content. They think about, well, this is what I'm going to talk about. But the reality is, when you're, and even when you're having a sales presentation, when you're having a pitch, you always need to put yourself in the other person's shoes or in your listener's shoes, in your audience's shoes. Because if you do not get them right away, if you do not find the right hook to pick them up, then you lost them at the beginning, and everything you're doing afterwards is nonsense.
And you have to work quite hard to try to get them back.
You do, and it's an uphill battle from the beginning. And quite a lot of them, you're never going to get back into the boat.
By that time, they're off looking at their phones or daydreaming.
Yeah, they're like, and they're basically, what am I doing here?
Ronny, you talk about magic moments. What's a magic moment, and how can a speaker create one?
Have you heard what noted speakers and readers are saying about Peter's book, The Captivating Public Speaker? You can do no better than investing in Peter George's new book. Chapters are meticulously organized, and every topic is handled with in-depth detail. This book is the ultimate resource. After this episode, please use the link in the show notes to check out The Captivating Public Speaker on Amazon. Now back to Peter and his guest.
That is a great question. I love to talk about magic moments, but let me turn the question around. What is a magic moment to you? What does it mean to you?
To me, a magic moment is when an audience and I are engaged, when I know I'm making a difference. You know, I can see it in their faces and in their body language. That's when I know that my desire to serve them is coming to fruition.
That's a beautiful way to put it. For me, I have a belief that at the end of our lives, we're not going to remember everything. But there are going to be certain moments, certain magic moments that really impacted you, that had an emotional meaning to you. And those can be big moments that you might even tell your grandkids about. When we talked before we went on a show here, you told me about one of those moments when you were a little kid and your dad went with you to a baseball game and he said, "Boy, you got to watch that player. You got to watch him bat." And who was it?
The great Mickey Mantle.
Exactly. And that is a magic moment that you are definitely going to tell as long as you're here.
Right.
But on the other hand, it can be also something small. It can be something that actually makes you fall asleep with a grin at night or makes you wake up in the morning with a chuckle. That you're just thinking about something. And that's a magic moment. So oftentimes those things happen. But not just that. We can also create them. So you're thinking, well, okay, that's fantastic, but how do I actually create a magic moment? Let me ask you, are you married?
Yes.
All right. And even if you're out there right now listening to us and you're thinking, well, I'm not married, how does this apply to me? You might know somebody who's married. And when you're married or before somebody gets married, something needs to happen first. One of the couple needs to actually propose to the other person. So he needs to ask that person. Let me ask you, do you remember that moment?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, I never met anybody who said, well, I'm married, but I have no idea how I got here. Or I don't know. I don't know how that happened. Like everybody remembers that moment. And also, were you the one who asked?
I was.
Okay, so one of the two person asks, and oftentimes it's the man, but it can also be the woman. So it doesn't matter. And the person who actually proposes is the person who is creating that magic moment. So it's the person who is actually asking himself many questions. And those might be questions. Well, first of all, I mean, you're going to answer, okay, who am I doing this for? Usually at that moment when you're asking somebody to marry you, then you already have that figured out. But besides that, you're also asking yourself, you're thinking, okay, what does he or she like? What does what is it that what experience do I want to create? What moment? Should it be somewhere where we are just by ourselves? Should it be somewhere where there are other people around? Maybe it should be at a game, or maybe it should be just the two of us in a balcony with the sunset in the background. How are we gonna do? Are we gonna make a picture or a video of it? And you're thinking about everything. What about the music? What kind of music does he or she like? And so all those thoughts go into your head, and you're planning everything. You're planning out the perfect moment. And then when the moment comes, you've pictured out everything and you just let it happen. And sometimes it doesn't actually work out the way you imagined it, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be memorable. And the reason why it is on the one hand, because it's obviously a marriage proposal is deeply emotional, but at the same time, it's something that you really planned out, you laid out, you really created that experience. And so you can do this also in your business context, in your private context. You can do basically the same formula that you can use for any kind of experience that you want to create, for people that you care about, for people that are close to your heart, that can be private or business-wise. Doesn't matter. It still works the same.
That's a great analogy. I like how you connect it to speaking and creating that moment. You also talk about wowing your audience. Is this similar, or is this something different?
I think it all comes back to what we already talked about. And wowing your audience also is about creating magic moments. That somebody who's in there has this emotional connection. That somebody who is in there is really like, wow, I like that. Or that there's something, some years ago, I was the head of entertainment at the biggest high school graduates party in Europe. And I did this for a few years. And there were 12,000 high school graduates over 3 weeks in Turkey. And every night, 21 days straight, we had basically a concert to put on the stage. And so I was planning out every single night. And at every single night, of course, there was, what's my outcome? Who is my audience? I knew that. I mean, it was basically the same kind of audience that I had every day. But also, I had a special space that was, what's the magic moment that I want to create on that evening? Like, what is that moment of that evening that I want people to remember? And so it's really specifically creating that.
I like that idea. It takes it to another dimension. Instead of just, I'm going to serve them and serve them well, it's, how am I going to impact them in a way that benefits them and is also memorable? Ronny, how do you prepare for a gig? Let's say you have an important one coming up. What do you do to prepare?
I want to give a different analogy here, because I always have, I always put preparation in 3 stages. And you might actually take a sports team as an analogy. So when you're a sports team, you also prepare, you have 3 different stages of preparation. The first stage is basically before the season. Like you meet and before the season, you prepare, you do all the foundations, you do all the fundamentals, you prepare everything in order to be ready when the season starts to play. So basically, to put this in a speaker's view, it's to do all the homework that you can sharpen your saw, basically, like everything that is connected with you as a persona on a stage. That can be basically doing some like being better in articulating, being better in storytelling, being better in your in the melody of your voice, of your pitch, taking singing lessons, taking acting lessons, doing a comedian workshop, taking dancing lessons, all kinds of things that make you better as a performer, as an entertainer on stage. So that's basically stage number one. The second thing, when we go back to the sports analogy in preparation, is you prepare for your next opponent. So you know, all right, on the weekend we have another game. That's our opponent. So we're going to prepare for that person or for that team. The same applies to you when you know you have a gig, you have a speaking gig coming up, and then you prepare. Then you go like, okay, what's my outcome for that gig? What's the topic? Who is my audience? And so on. So you're gonna go through all that process in preparation. As I said before, this process for me is what's my outcome? Who's the audience? What feeling do I want to leave them behind with? Then I'm gonna see, all right, am I the speaker on that day? Am I the only speaker, or is what is before me, what is after me? And then, of course, how do I fit in? And what experience do I want to give them? And then when I'm there, when I have the whole understanding about everything around it, then I actually start to go into the content. Then I start to, okay, I know what is my ending. I start with the end first. Like, what is my call to action? What is the end? I start with the end in mind. Then from there, I go, okay, how do I want to actually go into it? How do I want to start? So I already have the end, I have the start. And then how am I getting from the start to the end? What are my few points? Maybe 1, 2, 3 points, depending also on the time that I have. And then those points that I want to make, what are the stories that I have for that? What kind of stories can I bring into this that ties the experience together and makes this a flowing experience? And the third preparation is when we go back into the sports world, on game day. You're in the stadium. What do you do? And then it's like, all right, the warm up, and you prepare yourself. And of course, then those moments before you enter the pitch, those moments before you actually set foot out there, and you feel already anxiety, or you feel maybe some nervousness building up. You feel that there is a stadium there of people, the audience is there, and they are excited. And how do you deal with that? So that's the third stage of preparation, because also you need to prepare yourself mentally, potentially already visualizing your success, visualizing where you're going to go. So for example, when I was running the New York City Marathon in 2018, every time when I was training, every time that I went out to run, I was visualizing myself running over the finish line in Central Park, Manhattan. And that's exactly what you're doing out there. Before you go out there, you visualize your success, and also you connect with the audience. Even when you're still backstage, you can see them, you can feel them. And I always say you got to love them. You got to already establish an emotional connection before it's there. You got to feel them, and you got to be with them. And then get yourself in the state that you want them to be, because you got to be there first. And then you go out and rock and roll.
I love the way you put that. And it's so much like sports, because they're both, in one manner or another, a performance. Do you agree?
It is. It is. And I totally agree. It is a performance, and you got to make it natural. Let's take Barack Obama. And we're not talking about politics here. Yeah, and whatever you believe, I don't care whatever your beliefs are about his presidency. But what we can agree on probably is that he was a great speaker. He was a great performer on stage. And the reason why is because it seemed and looked natural. It seemed natural because he was being himself. And so you really need to be yourself up there as well, because you can only connect to your audience when you're yourself and when your focus is with your audience as well. That's another big mistake, by the way, talking about that I see inexperienced speakers, that they are focused on themselves and they're inside their head because they're thinking, well, what am I going to say next? What about this next? But they're not out there with the audience, not feeling them.
I think that equates to when we have a conversation one-on-one. I've never met you before. I'm a little nervous. I want to represent myself well. And while you're speaking, I'm standing here thinking about what I'm going to say next. We do that all the time. You say, "Hi, I'm Ronnie." We shake hands. 5 minutes later, I'm thinking, what's his name? Because I was concentrating on me, not you.
Or you concentrated on selling the other person something. You're just so focused on what you want to sell, but you're not even getting what the other person is telling you.
Focused on everything but the engagement.
Exactly.
Ronnie, I want to switch it up a little bit. I know you've been a television host. Do you have any advice of what would appeal to the television host or producer and how they can get on a show?
Absolutely. So first of all, yes, I've been for more than 1,500 hours live on TV, and I had about 800 interviews on TV. And many of them have been with the same people. So I've had quite a few amount of regulars that I had over and over again. So that being said means that, okay, this topic just popped up. Who do we have on this topic? And then there was basically a list of people that came into mind, like, okay, we could call this person, this person, this person, this person. And so whatever just happened, then there was kind of like a short list of people to call. And then they came to the studio, or we had it on Skype or on the phone, something like that. So how do you actually get on that short list? And what makes you stay on the short list? First of all, you need to get onto TV first. We would agree with that. When you get the opportunity, and I'm going to talk about how to get there in a moment. When you have the opportunity to be on TV, you really need to make this all about the audience, because it really is about the people who are watching you. It all is about what's the value that you can bring. When I'm saying about the value, it's not just about like, okay, 1, 2, 3. You need to make this fun, engaging, entertaining. You need to make it maybe a little bit provocative as well, where somebody's saying, well, really? I'm not sure, but I want to listen. I want to listen to what he has to say, or she has to say. So really, it's got to be, you got to talk in a way that people want to listen to you. So that's the first thing. Also, to make it interesting, to give some vivid examples, storytelling. That's always something that is really, really great when you can make this, when you can picture it. That the dude from the street can just, all right, I can follow. Okay, I can do something with that. So giving examples. And how do you actually get there? When you have a few topics that you're an expert in, or maybe just one topic that you're an expert in, dig you well before you're thirsty. So first of all, put yourself out there and get yourself like a database of journalists, of TV stations, of people that are in charge, and already put your name out there, even when there is not a current topic around that right now. You have two opportunities. Either you create something, you create a topic that makes it relevant for, and also relevant right now, that you can talk about your topic, or something pops up and you need to be fast. Because if something pops up, let's say COVID, and you're a virologist. I mean, okay, COVID has been a topic for some years. Maybe it's not a good example, but some example where you are, just comes up in that moment. You are the expert, and then in that moment, you already have your email addresses of the journalists, because you have been kind of doing your research before, and you can immediately, or you call them, you email them. Hey, I can give you a statement to that, or I can tell you something about that. So you immediately provide value in that moment, because in that moment they need that. And that is a great opportunity for you to get out there.
Now, should they contact the host? Should they contact a producer?
I would say every contact you have is valuable. So even if, for example, it depends on the size of the show, but also with the host, for example, if the host sees the value in it, the host is the shortest link to the producer. He just tells him, hey, I have a guy who can help us here. Like, it's usually at the media, it's a team sports. So it's like, who do we have here? Who, especially when something like, okay, how do I say this here? When the hits the fan, then it's really in the moment. All right, what do we do? Like, all hands on deck. Who do we got? Who do we have? And then so everybody basically throws in a name. And how about this person or that person? So it was quite frequently that I said, hey, I know somebody here, or we can talk with that person, or and so on. And so it's quite something. But of course, normally the producer is the person who is really making the calls, who is really getting the people in. Whoever you have there, it's better than nothing. or journalist for print as well is another thing.
As far as the host and the producer are concerned, I'm sure the producer doesn't mind if the host makes their life a little easier.
Of course. And, and here's the thing. Sometimes something just happens in a moment, which is your topic, and you need to be fast. Other times you can anticipate that. You already know it's going to come. You already know that next year, again, Christmas is going to be in December. You already know that the Super Bowl is coming. You already know that whatever it is and whatever there is, or that maybe the next elections and so on. So, but you know that this could be a topic if this is a topic for you, then you better be prepared and bring out something that's newsworthy, that is relevant, and that is actually that is somehow tied with the current moment.
Well, I hope my listeners take advantage of that, because I'm sure a lot of them have information, knowledge, and experience that, if they could get on shows, could help others. Ronny, this has been great. Where can my audience connect with you?
Just come on ronnyleber.com. You can find me there. You can also find a blog there. I have several blog posts about public speaking as well, about how to be a better speaker, how to structure your speech, how to be better in body language or work with your voice, all those kind of things. You can also contact me personally there. And of course, also on social media, maybe LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook /Ronny Leber. You can find me there very easily.
Thanks so much, Ronny.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to tune in again for a conversation with another public speaking expert. And remember to use the link in the show notes to go to Amazon and check out Peter's acclaimed book, The Captivating Public Speaker.